We started 4 weeks in a shed. At max, we could push out 500, maybe 750 on a good day. Now, to be in a fully automated factory where we have 2 encapsulation lines, both doing 12,000 capsules a day.
Yeah, 24,000 a day is nuts.
They are amazing coffee roasters who are excelling at their craft, and it's amazing to be able to enjoy that in a convenient way at home. However, what we wanted to do is that convenience doesn't need to cost the earth.
We received our first batch of 50,000 capsules from China. We encapsulated them and we realized that every capsule performs slightly differently. And we had to launch with essentially a defective product.
But it got to a point where, we started to think about names and kind of launch strategy and whatever. And of course, I get offered this job in London. It was where am I going to go? Which one am I going to choose?
We organized a meeting around a tiny table. It was like a school desk table. It was the CEO of Bootlegger, their head of product, and their CFO. And we sat around this table and they were like, guys, we've been watching what you've been doing and we're keen to work with you.
Mom, we made it.
Yeah. And I remember phoning Lou, video call. I think you started crying.
I am going to stick my foot right in it now, though, because I know that you two had a bit of a shareholding/equity dispute. Are you comfortable sharing that story? Hello, and welcome back to the Founder Files. Today, I'm talking to Daniel Pretorius and Lulu Larche, the co-founders, well, 2 of the 3 co-founders of 4 Weeks. Now, if you haven't heard of 4 Weeks, 4 Weeks make compostable pods for coffee that biodegrade in 4 weeks, currently producing 24,000 units a day. So I'm pretty sure you could say they're officially scaling and doing it quite quickly. But this podcast is about a couple things, really, about how do you commit to being a sustainable company, being very impact first, whilst being profitable, and the kind of conflicts in decision making there. How are you staying true to yourself and the benefits to your business and differentiating later? Also, just about running business with family. So, Daniel and Ollie are brothers, and then Lulu is their cousin, and they've co-founded this together. So what's it like starting that as family? What those dynamics are and the benefits towards that. We talk about their scaling journey, the challenges of their supply chain, and specifically their unique model of staying super niche, but then partnering with coffee roasters instead of roasting their own coffee. So again, just another story of niche is really solid in entrepreneurship. And outside of that, just so much about their culture, about how they run their company, how they bring in KPIs and KPAs, their fundraising from a private equity firm. There's a huge balance of just founder philosophy, human experience, family dynamics, to caring about the environment, and then deep business practical wisdom. So this is a full-rounded, holistic, epic podcast episode that I'm sure anyone of any flavor is going to enjoy. Pun intended, talking about coffee. But aside from coffee, talking about podcasts, right? So if you're not already following the Founder Files and this is the kind of content that you like and you're here for the first time or the second, third, fourth, but still not following, I suggest you do now. This is the best way to keep up with these incredible stories of founders building amazing businesses that are not only making the planet better, but are great for people, great for society, and are scaling quite rapidly. So yeah, click like, click subscribe, click follow now. But enough from me. Let's get straight into it with Dan and Lulu. Welcome to the Founder Files, the podcast that's like eavesdropping on a conversation with a successful entrepreneur over a fireside chat. Join me, Cameron Coots, through this unique experience of unfiltered stories and insights from scaling founders around the globe as they share their ups, downs, and everything in between. Dan, Lulu, welcome to the Founder Files. I love drinking coffee basically every single day, and I can't wait to hear from coffee entrepreneurs. So yeah, welcome to the podcast. Can't wait to get into it.
Thanks, Cam.
Thank you so much for having us.
So Dan, Lulu, right? Just talk to me a bit about what 4 Weeks is, right? I heard about you recently at an Iridium event. Dan, I saw you speaking there, and I obviously kind of fell in love with the concept and loved your energy straight out the gate. If no one really knows your business, yeah, what is 4 Weeks?
Amazing. I'll kickstart with that. I think 4 Weeks is really an opportunity for us to execute on an exciting idea that Lou, myself, and my brother, our third co-founder, had. I think at the heart, 4 Weeks is a coffee company that encapsulates coffee from South Africa's best roasters in home compostable capsules. We started 4 Weeks in 2019, and we started this company for 2 main reasons. One is that as family and co-founders, we absolutely love coffee. It's such an exciting, industry. And then two, we really love the planet. We'll get into this a little bit later about our background and where we grew up, but I think we've got this like, deep passion for creating a product that stands for something, and that really has as little impact on the planet as possible. And it was the intersection of these two areas, coffee and the planet, that 4 weeks was born.
Epic. And obviously, look, we've got loads of time. We're gonna get into the story. Well, I say loads of time, and usually it always finishes, and it feels like we don't have enough time. But let's just get into the kind of the just the fundamental business model. Are you retailing this? Do you like is it via e-commerce? Like, how do you distribute? Like, where do people buy your stuff, and what is your stuff? Like, let's get into the real, just frank details of what the business is.
Cool. So, yeah, put very simply, we have two business models. The first business model is our encapsulation service. It's a service that we provide to around 45 different coffee roasters around South Africa. What that service entails is that local coffee roasters will roast coffee. They'll send us roasted coffee beans. We then grind, encapsulate, package those coffee beans into home compostable and Espresso compatible capsules, and we send it back to the roasters to then sell through their sales channels. So that's the first part of our business. That accounts for about 60 to 75% of our monthly revenue. The second part of our business model, and this is really what creates, a uniqueness about 4 weeks, is that out of the 45 roasters, we've chosen 8 roasters around South Africa, and that we buy coffee from. We receive the roasted coffee beans, we grind, encapsulate, and package it in the exact same packaging, but we then sell that as a product across our sales channels. And those sales channels include our online store, which is obviously direct to consumer, and then it also includes B2B, which encompasses both retail. Retail would be like boutique retail, like Wellness Warehouse, Faithful to Nature, and then the hospitality industry. Obviously, tourism is a huge part of the South African economy, and capsules work really well in hotel rooms, and so that's essentially how our business works. And the B2B product side of our business obviously then accounts for 25 to 30% of our business.
Okay, that's super fascinating, because obviously, if someone checks out your website and goes, wants to buy these coffee pods and capsules now, it's like there's a solid co-branding that happens there, and so that's where I was curious of wrapping my head around how does that kind of work. So it's essentially you've already bought the coffee from them, and then from there entirely that revenue goes to you. So there's no revenue share that happens on the pods that you're selling via your website.
Well, maybe Lou can comment here in terms of like, yeah, Lou, maybe you can speak to collaboration and why we decided not to roast our own coffee, but instead to partner with South African top coffee roasters.
Great. Yeah, essentially, we started 4 weeks, as Dan said, for two reasons. That we really like, there's such a cool coffee community and scene in South Africa that's growing and thriving. And there are amazing coffee roasters who are just like excelling at their craft and their art. And it's amazing to be able to enjoy that in a convenient way at home. However, what we wanted to do is like that convenience doesn't need to cost the earth. It doesn't need to be aluminum or plastic that goes and lands in a landfill and is going to stay there for over 500 years. There's a better way to do it and a better way for that coffee to taste if you're going to drink it in that format. So yeah, as Dan said, we've chosen 8 roasters that we believe represent South Africa's favorite coffees. They're so different in terms of both their companies, their brands, their philosophies, and their roast types and the beans. So it's really interesting. And what we've done on the 4 week side is that we've created our own 4 weeks range where you can either enjoy all those roasters in one of our mixes. It's our 4 weeks collective mix. And we've also separated them into a bold mix, a 4 weeks bold mix, and a 4 week specialty mix. So in one box of either 10 or 50 of our home compostable pods that are designed for Nespresso machines exclusively, you get to enjoy like some of South Africa's favorite roasters at the push of a button. And fundamentally, beyond the coffee, and this links back to what Dan was saying about nature and how 4 weeks is all about coffee and nature, is that what we really wanted to do, and the main objective behind 4 weeks, the purpose of 4 weeks, is that we wanted to, yes, celebrate amazing coffee at home in a convenient way, but also use it as a way to kind of bring people's awareness and attention, our awareness, our attention to what we use. And once we've used it, what happens when we throw it away? There's kind of like grab, grow, throw, toss culture synonymous with convenience. And, once we put something in the bin, we don't really care where it goes. But that kind of thinking, that behavior isn't really sustainable. And for people who love nature as much as we do and love Earth and love the planet, this could be, we really were keen on 4 weeks being like a vehicle to use something as small as a pod, as habitual as your daily coffee that you love, to kind of make that awareness. And, wow, if one day you're using an aluminum pod and you're throwing it in the bin, you don't think about it, and then you switch to 4 weeks and it's compostable, home compostable. Okay, you may not compost at home, but we've designed packaging for our product that's a compostable pouch that once you've finished all your pods, you put it back in the compostable pouch. And then you can either compost it or return it to us and we'll compost it for you. And all of a sudden, a habit has changed and awareness has shifted. And one small little thing like your cup of coffee has hopefully added up to, especially if we all do it together and every day, change.
Yeah, so I love the passion, and I'm just gonna just run with that, and I'll park the business model the thinking for just now. That also explains why like that behavior change, because also what you're selling on your website is composters, right? And it's like it's obviously clear what it is, the behavior change that you're trying to make. But I guess on that, I mean, like that's the kind of core philosophy. Talk to me about why you started the business. Where did this idea come from? And what was your kind of challenge getting a viable product and business model out there?
So I think it's a few reasons. I think, as I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, on a personal level, I've been fortunate enough to grow up in an entrepreneurial household where, my dad was, often coming up with very interesting business ideas. It formed the conversation around many dinner time conversations. And that's inherently where 4 weeks started. My dad founded a company called Espresso in 2005. It was founded in our kitchen, and it was such a beautiful story to watch unfold. And in 2013, when Nespresso's patent ended, there was obviously quite a bit of demand and for rooibos or red espresso to be put inside an espresso compatible capsule. And, sharing a similar mindset to Lou and myself, my dad didn't want to put rooibos into an aluminium or plastic capsule. And with his entrepreneurial mindset, he started playing around with how can I develop a capsule that's made from a material that will, when discarded, compost. And it was a very cool process. I was in grade 11 in matric, and he started playing around with sugarcane fibers, wood fibers, bagasse, pulp, and basically got the product to its first prototype. And he took that to his business partner. Long story short, they decided not to launch with it. And that research just parked. And my brother and I were going through varsity, and it was in my final year of varsity that, I knew I didn't want to go into the like commercial landscape. I wanted to come and try and start, an idea in South Africa. And I said to my brother, cool, and my dad, I said, why don't we pick up some of the research that you've done, try and develop this into an actual product. But instead of focusing on rooibos, let's focus on something that we as a family love, which is coffee. And we decided to import a small sample capsule line that required two people to operate it. It could do about 500 capsules a day. And that was in the beginning of 2019. At that time, Lou and I are first cousins, so our mums are sisters, and we've always had a very strong, intimate, close relationship. And I've always been inspired by the work that Lou's done, and in her career, especially towards when around the 2019 time, she was working for some very cool global brands overseas. And yeah, she actually phoned me and she said, what, Dan, I've got a little bit of time. We've spoken about this idea of, compostable capsules and coffees. And she was like, why don't you come through to Cape Town, and every week we can spend 4 hours together and we can try and turn this into something. And after the first like few sessions, we were in Cape Town, like having a glass of wine, like working late into the evening. And, Lou said, I'm keen to get involved. And, I think we're very different in how we approach things, but we work incredibly well together. And so, myself, my brother, and Lulu then decided, cool, we see value here. Let's try and launch this into a product. And, that's where 4 weeks began. And we started off focusing on, how we can launch the first ever home compostable capsules. And that was where our research was focused, was actually developing a capsule. And we spent 6 months doing that. I flew to China. It was an incredible process to be in. Um, and we launched 4 weeks at the Johannesburg City Farm Market in the beginning or towards the end of 2019 with our own patented uh, the Gus capsule. And we quickly realized that working with China was a lot more difficult than we anticipated. Quality control was an absolute nightmare. And, we received our first batch of 50,000 capsules from China. We encapsulated them and we realized that every capsule performs slightly differently. And we had to launch with essentially a defective product. And that was a very frustrating process because we knew that our idea had, a long runway. It was very exciting, launching at the market. People were very excited because of the waste generated by capsules and to get, for the first time ever, really good quality in compostable pods. And yeah, we had to make quite a tough business decision. That was probably our first real tough business decision, was to park our own manufacturing of capsules and to work with an existing foreign supplier. And yeah, that's a little bit about where we started and what kicked this business and idea off today.
Cool. I'm gonna park that one because obviously that's a kind of pivot point. Deciding your supplier, etc., is going to be a big one. I want to take a step back. I had no idea about your dad having Red Espresso before this. I mean, like that's again why I love doing this. It's like there's always insights that I get, and we have conversations beforehand. Why was this not, generated as a subsidiary, as a spin-off within that company? Why didn't you leverage like existing case capabilities, existing supply chain? Your dad was kind of doing this already. I know, obviously, as a like, it's still not going to stop me as a founder starting my own company and you being the CEO of that. But there's still a lot of that like know-how, those capabilities, that IP. What was that decision? And especially as like you're still starting this as a family business anyway. Why did you do this as a complete, from scratch instead of leveraging what your dad already had? Because at face value, it's something that seems like you could leverage,
Yes.
but obviously it's usually not
I
that
think it's a
simple.
great question. And I think it speaks to like two areas that we're going to get stuck into a little bit later. The first one is, short term gain versus product integrity. And I think that the reason why Red Espresso decided not to launch with this product was because there was still like a year or two of prototyping left. And that meant, sales forgone in the short run. Whereas it was a lot easier to launch in a plastic or an aluminum capsule from the get go. So I think that was one of the reasons why it wasn't done. And then the second reason was Red Espresso wasn't solely owned by my dad. So I think that was another contributing factor to why it wasn't done under the lid of Red Espresso, but why we created our own separate company. And then I think maybe the third thing was obviously the size of the coffee industry and the appeal of, launching a coffee brand rather than launching a tea brand.
Yeah, 100%. But I just doubling down on this point around your kind of what's your dad's involvement in 4 weeks? I mean, like, is he part of your board? Is he an advisor, or is it just like, Dad, I've got this challenge. Like, what have you gone through before, etc. Like, because the point there is that, either way, it's entrepreneurship, right? And it's like, cool, there's loads of lessons that you're gonna get, but it's like it's a very similar type of business. Very different, similar supply chain problems. You're gonna have very similar distribution issues. You're gonna have very different kind of similar kind of channels. You got a different market, different kind of obviously products, but like that in terms of the nature of the supply chain and value chain itself, they are very similar. So I just imagine there's like a fountain of knowledge and wisdom there. So like, do you use it, or are there some family dynamics here that it's like maybe let's not get into
No,
that?
I would say from my side, we definitely leverage off it. When we were first trying to like decide the equity structure of 4 weeks, right in the beginning, it was myself, my brother, my dad, and Lulu. And, I think my dad saw like the excitement and the direction this was going. And, he was at a stage in his life where he was like, cool, doesn't want to be involved in another startup. And he was very happy to see us take his research and form it into a product. At that stage, it wasn't a finalized product yet. So there's still a lot of legroom to do. And I think the role that he plays today is more of a mentor. And, for both Lou and I, he's Lou's uncle as well. And Lou might touch on this a little bit later, but she also worked for Red Espresso for 10 years. And so she also shared an incredibly strong relationship with my dad. And I think he's been a huge guide and more of a soundboard to us. Every month we send a shareholder update to our shareholders. And he's the only person that's included in those emails, but it's not a shareholder, and doesn't sit on our board either.
No, I like it. That makes sense. So obviously, Dan and Ollie are pumped about this. Lulu, you're having conversations, and but you're like you are trending in your career at this moment. As Dan was saying, you're working on some epic brands. What was the thing that you saw that it was like I want to get involved in this? Did it happen immediately, or like as you started giving some of that time, really that like passion and that excitement builds? Talk to me about your perspective on the starting journey.
Yeah, sure. I think as Dan mentioned, I was one of the team members that started Red Espresso. And so that was just, kind of kind of getting into the coffee industry, even though we were tea. And I spent the first year selling Red Espresso out the boot of my car in Johannesburg, trying to convince people to put rooibos through their espresso machines. But fell in love, always had loved coffee, and then fell in love with the coffee industry. The coffee industry in South Africa is so cool. So I think I've always had like a soft spot for the coffee industry in SA. And then, yes, I was with Red Espresso for 9 years and then realized I'd reached my ceiling there and also had found a real passion and love for strategy, specifically brand strategy, but seeing brand strategy as business strategy. Hopped off, got some great clients overseas, and just before 4 weeks, or the 2 years before 4 weeks, I had the privilege of working with the current CEO of Coty and the former president of L'Oreal and Lancome. Her name is Sue Nabi. She is the rock star of beauty globally, and I had helped her launch her super premium, like green, clean, vegan skincare line. It had been two quite, yeah, intensive years of traveling a lot between London and Cape Town, launching the brand, etc. And I was at a bit of a crossroads where I wasn't sure I'd been offered a permanent position with the team in London. And for me, I was being pulled into, yeah, the reality of living in London. For me, it was materialism, lack of nature, etc. I was quite keen to get back to Cape Town, to really enjoy, yeah, more of like what Cape Town has to offer, especially in terms of nature and my family. And yes, I remember Dan and I, we met at the Strangers Club for our first few sessions, and they were fun. Obviously, yeah, really like fed off each other beautifully. And when it got to a point where, okay, we started to think about names and kind of like launch strategy and whatever, and of course, I get offered this job in London. It was like, where am I going to go? Which one am I going to choose? And I think I think and the potential to work with Dan and Ollie was really exciting. I loved the fresh energy. I loved the youthfulness. I loved the ambition. And I also had in my career helped build so many brands for other founders, but never had built my own or our own. And that felt really exciting. Like nobody's going to really stop us, from doing what we want to do or making mistakes or pushing the boat out a little bit or building the brand that we really wanted to and want to exist in the world. And that felt like a really awesome opportunity.
Perfect. Well, I guess also on the name, right? How did the name come up originally in the first place?
The name came up because our original bagasse, for two reasons. Our original bagasse capsule, after 4 weeks, just like an apple core, it would start breaking down. So that was its point of the first point of its
Sorry, on that, what the
decomposition.
what I heard Dan throw that word out earlier. What the hell is bagasse?
Okay, bagasse is sugarcane pulp, so it's the
Thank you.
waste
Yeah.
from sugarcane. Yes, you can find it with like egg cartons and some disposable bagasse paper plates or cups, takeaway lids, etc. Yeah, so it's a super sustainable, awesome product. So yes, at 4 weeks, our first pod started breaking down at the rate of an apple core. And secondly, 4 weeks is actually the flavor window between the time the coffee beans have been roasted to the time you should enjoy it, where it's like max. And we also believed, because our purpose at 4 weeks is all about shifting coffee habits and culture, we really wanted, we believe that like a 28 to 4 week window for adopting a new habit or, changing your habits is a good time frame too. So it was for those reasons we called our brand 4 weeks, 4WKS. It's the abbreviated version. We definitely got some funny responses in the beginning. Oh, orcs, forks. People couldn't really. But it's kind of like Hermes or those cool brands that you kind of have to know. Cool, that's how you say it. But it's worked really well for us, and yeah, we all love the name.
We love the name. And I think, it takes me back to one of our first sessions that Lou and I had together at her apartment in Cape Town. And, that was really the value that Lou and the experience that Lou could bring to the table was teaching us how to launch a brand. We had never done it before. And I remember, Ollie was actually there at the time, and Ollie and I arrived at her apartment, and she had written down like on a white piece of paper, Lou loves to work off paper, all of these different names. And it was such a fun session. There was so much laughter. And, I remember we had actually, Lulu had written the word shot, SHOT, speaking to like a coffee shot, an espresso shot, a lungo shot. And Ollie and I were like, no ways, we love that. And for like, I don't know what it was, a day or a week, our name was shot. And then I remember Lou coming back to us and saying, I think I've got it. And she had written the name 4 weeks. And I can see, I think we've still got the piece of paper in our office. And I remember seeing like how differently we could write it. And that was such like, I think that encapsulated really like the morals and the foundations and the values that we started 4 weeks off, like always remembering to have fun. Like that's super important for us, and aiming high, like always evolving, like collaborating, it felt like a very collaborative session. And and yeah, I think that gave 4 weeks a very strong foundation, a very rooted foundation, and obviously the trust of family, and to start a really beautiful brand and a yeah, a successful company.
I mean, and like another part of the story that I absolutely love because how we measure success at MedEvolve is besides like increase in revenue and increase in net profit that exceeds increase in revenue, it's also increase in founder vacation days. And you kind of like baked that in from the beginning because you also had 28 days of leave straight out the gates. And I love the story that you shared of you brought an investor on board and they were like, no, the most of the like CEOs and founders that I back don't have this much leave. Like, we're gonna negotiate this and we're gonna bring it down. And you were like, absolutely not. It's not negotiable. I don't want to. I've completely spoiled the entire story for the audience there. But can you actually share that bit there?
I think, yeah, I mean, it was a funny story. I mean, we raised capital in November last year, and we've partnered with a really cool private equity firm that's been hugely impactful to our company. And after we had done all of the due diligence and we had signed the a capital raise agreement, I got a phone call from one of their lawyers, and she said to me, "Hey Dan, how's it going?" I said, "Well," she's like, "I'm just going through your contracts," and she was like, "I see that there's 28 days of leave in your contract as managing director. I'm sure that's a mistake. I just wanted to clarify." And I said to her, "No, no, it's not a mistake." And she was like, "Oh, wow." She was like, we invest in over 100 companies and we've never seen this before." And it took her a while, and I think they were also taking, with the investment, they knew they were investing in a new age company. And I think for us, what's really important is like, and Luke can speak to this as well, is we've tried to build a company that's output focused instead of time focused. And that's quite difficult to do, because our whole society runs on, a focus on time. What time do you get into work and what time do you leave? And we've instead tried to foster a culture of like accountability and output focus. And I think we've also realized the importance of being able to, step back from your own company and allow it to run by itself. And I think that's one of the biggest sort of like, you know, not issues, but concerns with companies in South Africa is they're very reliant on shareholders and their top tier management. And of course, they've got huge roles to play. But I think for us, this is not the first business that we're going to build. And so I think it's been a very important lesson to ask ourselves, how do we build an asset of value? How do we build a company that when I take leave for 2 weeks and turn my phone off, that I come back and, it's running smoothly? And I think that's actually the goal. It's not about taking 8 days of leave and, being in some expensive like city around the world. It's really being like, cool, how can I step out of the company ensure that we've empowered our team to do some really good work and come back and everyone's thriving. And I think we've noticed two things. One is we've been able to keep up with that 28 days commitment every year, sometimes 29. So we've been able to keep up with that commitment. Yeah,
Sometimes 30.
sometimes 30. So I think that's something that I'm really proud of. I think number two is we've really noticed that if you step out and empower your individual team members, they thrive off that responsibility. And they feel seen, and it's like an opportunity for them to like step up and contribute some really great work. And that's probably the biggest impact. So yes, it's great to be, and it's a huge luxury. Lou and I see it as a huge luxury to be able to take, a month ago I went to the Mentawais for 2 weeks on a surf trip with 6 friends, and we had no signal there, and I turned my phone off. And it was such an empowering feeling to know, cool, I'm turning my phone off, not concerned about what's going back on in the office at 4 weeks. And I think, what that is, as I said, it empowers the team, but also importantly for me, it allows me to take rest. And I've now come back feeling like super revived, energized, and it allows me to finish off the work, the rest of the year, like in a really strong way.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love that, right? It's the whole point of success really is about autonomy and freedom. And I love the fact, like, innovation happens within constraints. And the fact that you force this constraint of time means that, it's very different to like if you're in the hustle kind of culture mindset of working 14-hour days, working 7 days a week, right? Like that mentality of like what entrepreneurship is. Like, I believe it doesn't have to be that way. And clearly so do you, which I really like. But the point there is, it's like there's a very different proactive build that happens. Is the fact that it's the person that's, I'm tired and I want to take a break now. But the point is, it's like I'm still gonna be checking my phone because I don't feel like the team can necessarily handle it because they haven't been in a position to be able to handle it before. But if I know from the beginning of this philosophy that, I mean, we're taking this much time off, right? I'm going to be super proactive about, like, am I delegating properly? Are they very clear on the expectations? Are there clear processes? Are we focused on the right things? Is everything just like scattered and everything's a priority at the same time? Or have we actually, separated our focus and making sure that we've got an actual plan in place? And are we communicating? Does everyone understand? Do they know the direction? Do they know how they fit into this? Like, and that's the point is, because if if you want to take that time off, you need those things in place. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to take the leave. And I just love that as a principle because what I find the usefulness of strategy and clarity is it's about doing that so that people that kind of struggle to take time off now can, versus it's like you just reverse engineered it. Like if you force yourself to take more time off, right? In order to do that, you have to have a clear strategy that everyone understands and how they fit into it. Um, so epic, yeah. I just wanted to give that a little bit of deliberate airtime.
Maybe just a quick one on that. Sorry, just because I think it feeds quite nicely, and Lou, maybe you can comment on this. But I think that, we ask ourselves that exact question, like, how do we know our team members feel supported? And I think for us, we've created a very clear like support and strategy structure for our team, which I think is really which works really well. And that's really thanks to Lou and what she brings to the company, from her experience and strategy. And our financial year starts off with 2 or 3 days. Outside of the office, we usually try and embed ourselves in nature, like a really cool hut up in the mountains. And our whole senior leadership team goes away, and we use that time basically to ask ourselves, what do we want from the next year? What are like the key goals and key projects that we're going to work on and execute, to ensure that 4 Weeks continues growing and evolving as a company. And that's how a year starts off. And to do that outside of the office is obviously a lot of fun. It allows your mind to like go from the micro focus to like, cool, let's think bigger picture. So that's the first area where we supported. And then Lou and I put from that session, pulled together a very clear strategy for the year that's used as a compass and a guide. And I think from there, how we then execute on that strategy is that every 2 weeks we have like short huddles where we break up the month into 2 week sprints. And we basically say, cool, what are we focusing on in order to achieve these projects? And what that allows our team to do is break down much bigger, like quite scary projects into like smaller, achievable sprints. And I think those two, sort of like part of like our company culture and part of how we run our company has been very helpful to allow us to track to a clear yearly strategy, and also allow the team to be focused on like what they need to do, and whilst we're not here.
Chef's kiss. Lulu, please give me more.
Yeah, and coming back to the 28 days of leave, and yes, you can see we milked the 4 weeks, however we were going to slice and dice it across the company, but it worked so well. And I think, yeah, coming back to that, Dan explained it so beautifully, is also accountability. As leaders, let's say, going away for that time and turning your phone off, also having the accountability, and through our structures we put into place a very clear strategy, very clear documents that help us track to that strategy on a bi-weekly basis, or bi-monthly basis, sorry. Make sure that when we have taken or are taking time off, everything is kind of in its place. Nobody has to pick up the slack. And that accountability, goes both ways, which I think is also a very important point.
And maybe to round this all off, one of the things that we've implemented in the last year to further assist with this is, and to allow to really encourage our company to be output focused, is very clear KPI and a KPI document. And as of the beginning of this year, we onboarded a business coach and an industrial psychologist to assist us with this. And I think that what we've done is that with the senior leadership team, we've really put together a very clear like key performance areas. And then within each key performance area, it's like, what are the key performance indicators? And, obviously having a finance background, I was very aware of this, but it was something that we never implemented. And implementing this from the beginning of this financial year has been hugely beneficial. And not so much beneficial for us, but more for the team, because they know exactly the direction that they need to go in, and also what a successful, sort of like a job from them looks like. And I think that's been very empowering for each of our team members, is to have that clear guideline in terms of like, this is what the company expects, not just from me, but from the role I'm fulfilling. And we've done KPI documents for ourselves as well, because I've also got to, report to the board. And I think that's been very helpful for me, because it separates like, Dan, the shareholder, and it's actually, no, this is what we need from the role as managing director. And it's been a very cool like separation to make in terms of like operational involvement and being a shareholder of a company. And those two things are very different.
Quick break before we jump back in. At the Founder Files, I've had conversations with hundreds of entrepreneurs at every single stage. So from the scrappy first days all the way to scaling across continents. But the signals of how ready you are to scale, and or while scaling where these certain pain points, they can be pretty consistent, right? And so because of that, I've built something called the Founder Roadmap, name still TBC, but the point is there's an assessment built in that's going to take you just about 7 minutes. And it's going to show you, exactly what's happening in your growth journey. It's everything from how you're thinking about your strategy, how you're thinking about your people, your structure, your execution, and just testing that based on what the best practices are that I've seen over hundreds of businesses. So it's short and sweet, but it's also going to suggest you some next moves based on what your answers are, and it allows you to be able to build your own roadmap to be able to take on these next moves and, make the scaling journey a little bit more fluid, a little bit faster in the next 90 days. It's totally free. There's no email sign up. I'm not trying to build a list. It's just my gift back to you for showing the support for the podcast and me showing my support to you as the audience. So yeah, thank you for listening. And if you want to experience the Founder Roadmap yourself, please go to roadmap.metavolve.co or click in the link in the description below. Only thing I ask in exchange is your feedback so I can make that better. Let's get back into the episode. So, okay, I'm loving this because you are just sharing stuff that I absolutely live and breathe, but I often find quite a bit of resistance in. And so and the reason why is because founders naturally want to be creative. They love the chaos. They love the innovation. They also did this for the sake of freedom. So it's like, you tell me that I need KPAs and KPIs now. I'm fine for my team to have them. They need them. I don't need this. Like I don't want a corporate job, right? So
Yes.
I just talk to me. Just talk to me about that. Like, what are some of these now that you've experienced this and you are founders yourselves? What are some myths or misconceptions that some founders have about really structuring their own roles, creating some focus on how they're performing, doing that in the team? Because a lot of people hear this and immediately have an allergic reaction because it sounds like corporate bureaucracy. What would you say to that?
And I think that's such a good, it's going to be very cool to show how different Lou and I are. And that's why it's been also one of my biggest learnings in 4 weeks, is understanding that my way is not the only way. And I think coming into the company, I sort of thought that, cool, we're all going to go to the office together and we're going to be in the office from 8 to 6, when we start. And Lou was like, no, that's not how I work. I like to work in the evenings. My best work is in between like 6 p.m. and 11 p.m. That's when I do like great work. And I was like, what do you, so you're not going to come into the office? And she was like, no, this doesn't work for me. And I think that's really been where it's highlighted like, cool, obviously you need to have some form of structure because you've got a team and a business to run, but you've also got to allow each individual sort of to work to their best, in their best way. I don't know, Lou, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Dan. I think there's, compromise. And for somebody like myself who is a creative person, I've also, my whole career has been in startups, not necessarily as a founder, but in helping to grow and scale and found and scale the business. And yes, as a creative person, sometimes, hearing KPI, KPA, I can understand a lot of founders being, whoa, but I think that you can do it in a creative way. I feel that our KPI documents that we have are creative. They don't feel restricting in any way. They feel empowering. They feel clear. They feel manageable. And it's just such a nice kind of objective way of measuring, am I, as the brand director of 4 weeks, doing a good job and actually moving the business forward in the way that the business needs. And I think coming to Dan's point about, office based, non office based, I agree. I think that depending on the role and what's required of the role, I think that some form of flexibility and compromise is both important and necessary, especially if you are output focused. I think giving a person the trust, the freedom, and the responsibility to be able to ship their best work in the way they know how, obviously in the confines of making sure that the business is always being looked after and protected and that the business's interests are always at the forefront. I think there's an awesome way to achieve that. For me, I'm a strategist, so I need a lot of quiet time, thinking time. To be in an office where, in our first year or two in Cape Town, I would go in maybe, once or twice a week, and I found it incredibly distracting, especially as somebody who's worked remotely since 2013. It was a massive change to have to go into an office, which in the winter was cold and drafty, and then friends are coming in, and then somebody wants to come and have a coffee with you, and then this person, I did not work. I was like, no, guys, sorry, it's not going to work for me. And yeah, so I think, yes, being honest about your needs, understanding the person, and making sure that it is always output focused or based has worked for us.
And that's where I think the like KPA, KPI documents have really provided like structure to supporting each individual because the output is very closely monitored. And it's been something that, yeah, I think has been hugely beneficial. And someone like me who's more rigid, who thrives off structure and routine, it's very easy to have a document like that. And then I think, look forward looking into the future of 4 weeks and the future of me as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as a business starter and as a business grower, I want to know that I can deliver to what, external shareholders want. Like for me, that's also an exciting challenge. You know, we, set to grow, 4 weeks by 83% this year. That's a big, like audacious goal. And I think for me to have that, like, on my, under like company performance, to grow at 4 weeks by 83%, like that's an incredibly exciting like target for me. And as Lou said, it doesn't feel like I'm being confined or boxed in. That feels like an opportunity to live into, to be like, cool, how can we utilize our team, our processes, and our structures to get us to that point?
Okay, you've definitely activated one of my passion points, and I think if I'm taking the mic right now, because I was like, I have to say something. I think to the points of KPAs and KPIs is still this principle of freedom within a framework, and the fundamental point is that if you are helping craft someone's job around their strengths, and their strengths are not just the things that they're good at, it's the things that make them feel strong, that make them feel good within their role. It means that, for example, me, who's the more extroverted person in the team, loves networking, loves being able to like persuade people, convince them, see like get their eyes to open to a new possibility, i.e. sales. I just like don't like the word sales, but sales. Um, but then it's the point is like, okay, what's that key performance area, right? So it's going to be about the growth of the business, specifically about bringing new customers in, and that's what you need to be doing. And what are the indicators that you're doing that? Like, what are the leading things around there? Is it's like how many people are you networking with? How many prospects are you Are you having first conversations with? Like, how are you kind of progressing that into later conversations and then proposals to Brett, etc. And the point of the numbers there is that, one thing, at least for me, I can get very guilty of is sitting there and being like, oh, I feel like I've had a really great week because I've done the stuff that's super exciting. And then I look at it and I was like, well, how many of the things that you're supposed to do did you do? And I'm like, two. And it's like, yeah, are you going to achieve your goals that way, right? And that's the other point. Is it's like the in terms of the way that we look at our direction, the way that we unpack our annual goals, quarterly priorities. It also links to the fact that these KPIs and KPIs are very fluid, right? It's like they might be one set for this quarter, but next quarter they're going to change because the thing is we've got different projects, we've got different things that we need to achieve, and we're going to look at ourselves as a complementary team. So who can we rely on, and what area of the strategy do we need to be achieved? Whose strengths align with that? And then are you bought into doing this? Cool. These are the things that we need to do and indicate and measure to make sure that we're hitting the volume and the frequency that we need to in order to make sure that that's achieved. And that's what we're going to hold you to. I don't care if you're showing up at 6 o'clock in the evening or 2 o'clock in the morning, right? As long as those numbers are being hit, that's all that really matters. Um, and yeah, trust me, I'm same page. Industrial psychologist who's also a business coach and strategist. This is my game. Cool. So going back to a couple steps in the story, right? Starting this as a family business, we've got Dan, Lulu, Ollie. Also coming from a dad that's really been in the industry. What's it like, right? What's it like starting a business with family? I mean, it's like you. There's this age old like cliche of like never start a business with your best friends. It's never going to go well. But then there's so many examples in the world of like family run businesses that are amazing success stories. So I guess what are the pros? What are the cons? What are the things that just like worked immediately because of working with family, and what are some things that kind of hit you a little bit further down the line?
I think that for me, like the most beautiful thing about starting a company with family is like that level of innate trust. I think that, to be able to trust like your business partners, um, it's an incredible luxury. We started 4 weeks like never questioning the integrity of any one of our work. If Lou was coming up with, our launch campaign or our brand name, like I had complete trust in the delivery of exceptional work. If Oliver said, guys, I need to take a step back, I just need some focus time, like please allow me that. There was no question about that. And I think that really allows you to focus on growing the business. So, for me, like, would I start another business with family? Like, hell yes, 100%. And I think that, obviously we knew starting a family business that there is always going to be like different opinions and different ways of seeing things. And I think, what Lou, myself, and my brother agreed right from the beginning, like, and I get this was done in another piece of one of Lou's white papers, was we always agreed that, if there was a decision or a disagreement that was either at the detriment of the company or us as family, it was going to be the company. And what we mean by that was family always came first. We've grown up in a Mauritian Catholic family where, family is the core of who we are. We celebrate Christmases together, and, so many of our memories. I mean, I grew up on Lou's farm up in KZN. Like, so many core, like, beautiful shared memories are around family. And I think that's one thing that I feel very proud, sitting here today, is that we've always stuck to that promise. And, we might, or we will get into, where we had a disagreement between the three of us as founders, as brothers and as cousins. But I think that we were able to work through that. And I think the only reason why we were able to work through that is because of how we've been raised as family. So that would be my take.
Yeah, I think, working with family like anything, has both like advantages and disadvantages. The advantages or the light is, as Dan said, there's innate trust. Obviously, it's a lot of fun. You know each other really well, but that can have a shadow side as well, where there's expectations built in because of the family dynamics. That can be linked to age. She's older than I am. He's the older brother. I have to listen. He has to listen to me. There's kind of ingrained, inbuilt family dynamics that unfortunately are there. And I think to learn how to separate those in a business, especially when it is across generations, is obviously a challenge in itself. Um, and I think that with family, if something or when something happens where one feels hurt, betrayed, disrespected, not heard, whatever it may be, it's the emotions are even more heightened than it would be if it was just a colleague, somebody who's not actually embedded in the tapestry of your life. Um, and I think that like any close relationship you have in life with your founding partners, with your family, with your loved ones, with your friends, there are invariably going to be difficult moments and altercations. And I think that when you're working as a family in a business, that is definitely going to happen. I'm sure anybody listening who's in a family business can like put their hand up and be like, yeah, sure. But in saying that, it's got the most amazing opportunity and gifts in it too. Because I think that there's an opportunity to really communicate, to understand and respect and accept one another, where he or she is in his or her life. And I think an opportunity to actually stand in your truth and to speak your truth in a way that's outside of the family dynamic, which I think is incredibly powerful. And then I think when you are able to get through any difficulties or obstacles, what the end result is something a lot stronger and deeper and real and honest than you've ever had before. Because it's not just the fun at Christmas or the memory of having a beautiful holiday in Greece together, which is all fun and games. It's real. I've seen the best of you, you've seen the worst of me, and we've managed to come through together. And I think that's rare and very, very beautiful. And, I was having a chat with a friend the other day, and we were speaking about a separate in his family dynamic and difficulties and fights and arguments, whatever. And he said something that was like resonated with me so deeply. And he said, we look at the world and all the kind of conflict, strife, everything. And if we are able to tackle that in a family environment, to speak the hard truths, to have the conversations, to show up authentically, to get through it. Like, wow, isn't that kind of the most powerful form of peace and resolution? And it starts like right where you live, where you work, where you play. It's your partners, it's your life partners, your business partners, your family, your friends, your team. That's where it starts.
It sounds like you've got a very healthy family dynamic where you can actually have healthy conflict with one another instead of like brushing stuff under the rug just for the sake of false harmony. So, firstly, yeah, shout out to the broader family for facilitating that. Uh, I am going to stick my foot right in it now, though, because I know that you two had a bit of a shareholding slash equity dispute. Are you comfortable sharing that story?
Yes, I think, I think what you will do, first of all, thanks for, I think what you said summed it up really beautifully. And I think that, just to, not to go into any detail, but to, what we've been alluding to is just a disagreement between, Lou and I as shareholders and also as cousins. And I think that there's two things that I want to say there. One was obviously, disagreements happen and they're real. And I think that caused quite more conflict than in any sort of a normal shareholder dispute, and that's because there was this added layer of family to that, and obviously
Yeah, because you're not going to
respecting.
have like tact or diplomacy. I'm going to tell you how it really feels straight out the gate.
Exactly. And I think that that speaks to like the core values of authenticity, vulnerability, and transparency that we've built 4 weeks off. And I think to be able to have those real hard conversations and to share openly and very rawly with each other with how we feel. And yeah, it basically got to a point where we were in a crossroads and it was cool. Are we going to, not continue this business together because we have a fundamental disagreement? Or, are we going to go to like court and try and resolve this? And for us, it was very clear. We put our differences aside. We realized that the next year of sort of healing was going to be a rocky road, but we decided to go that route. And I think it speaks to like what Lou and I haven't shared is that if you look at the 4 weeks logo, and it's a circle that's basically been broken into four separate parts. And that brokenness speaks to an ancient art of kintsugi. And it was embedded in our logo by our first designer, Hanu Sale. And the idea behind kintsugi is that you take a piece of art, usually ceramics, something that's a little bit broken, you break it apart, and then using like a gold joinery, you piece this piece of art back together to create something more beautiful than what you had in the beginning. And I think that speaks to what we've been able to do with, our relationship as cousins and as business founders. And understanding that, you are going to go through difficult moments. You are going to have fundamental disagreements. Sometimes those are going to get to the point where, you can't continue. But I think what well, I'll speak for myself, what I'm so happy with is that we've been able to piece that relationship back together. And, we sit here today as like two formidable founders and with an incredibly exciting future ahead of us.
Lulu, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I agree. I mean, I think we're both super proud of having gone over that, hurdle. And I wanted to say, I don't think it's just about family. I think that, people are different fundamentally. You can be with a founder like Dan's into that. He's quite structured. He likes things a certain way. I'm like, oh, I don't want to be boxed. So it's having to find that middle ground. And then secondly, I've touched on it before, but I think when you're working across generations, you inevitably find yourself at different life stages. Ollie and Dan, it was their first kind of proper business where they were going to dedicate, a full working week to getting it off the ground. First time living in Cape Town, new apartment, first office. It's all a series of firsts. I was coming in at a very, very different life stage, and I think that linked to that is also at various life stages, you have to make certain decisions for your own life. Um, because at the end of the day, that's what we're here for beyond business. And I think that there's an understanding also amongst founders that is important of where are you in your life stage. And I think that's a very important thing to think about moving or going into a partnership to start. Um, and understanding that, life can happen, it has its twists and its turns, and how you're going to handle it um, as founders and what is its impact on the business.
And I think to put that into like practical terms, what we mean by that is like just, for is really having like a clear agreement from the onset. And, that was maybe something that we overlooked because we had this trust as cousins and as brothers. And we were like, there's never going to get to a time where we don't agree, unanimously on something. That's not going to happen. And so, having those agreements, those clear objective agreements in the beginning, especially around equity, and things like vesting and cliff raises, is very important to get that like signed from the get-go, because what that will allow you to do, you don't have to bring subjectivity and emotions into disagreements, and it also allows you to focus on the business. And that's where I think for us there was a real big turning point. Was like, cool, are we going to continue focusing on conflict at the detriment of building a company, or are we going to put all of our energy and effort into continuing to grow this beautiful foundation that we had built together?
Obviously, really, I respect boundaries and someone's comforts in being able to discuss these things. This is inherently a sensitive topic, but because it's a sensitive topic that almost every entrepreneur experiences at some point, or there's always going to be a shareholder dispute, like at some point in some kind of business. Would you be comfortable giving some more specific details to the story, or would you prefer that you kept that like not on a podcast? Because the audience of entrepreneurs, other people are going to go through this stuff, and how you resolved it practically would be quite valuable. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I'm just yeah.
I mean, I could share in a very simple term and not go, because essentially it was very simple what happened. And essentially what happened is that Lulu just moved to Greece. We wanted someone on the ground, and that was where the conflict came in. It was like, cool, how are you going to run 4 weeks from Greece? And I was like, cool, I don't think you can run 4 weeks from Greece. Lulu was like, I can do everything from Greece. And, the like very cool tools that we implemented was like, you know what? Lulu doesn't, as the brand director and brand strategist, she doesn't need to be on the ground in 4 weeks. And that was like where, like on a personal note, and That's one of the big things that I've had to learn in business. And I'm happy for this to go on record. And that is like control. Like I love controlling. And it can be a very good thing, but it's probably one of my like below the line characteristics is like wanting to control situations. And I see that in everything, in terms of like what our house looks like and choosing linen with my girlfriend. Like, my choice is like what I want us to, that's the linen I want, and it was the same thing. I had this idea of like how we wanted to run 4 weeks. And I really had this like intuitive feeling or the strong feeling that Lulu needed to be with Ollie and I, like in the office. And, if she wasn't here, like that's okay, but she couldn't be part of the business. And, I was wrong in that thinking because it's worked out perfectly. And that was really where the contention came in. It was me with my control being like, cool, I need you to be here. As managing director of the company, I need you here. And I think like, being able to, one, me work personally on like, my understanding of control and letting go of that. And that's what I mentioned to you earlier, where it's been one of my big lessons in 4 weeks. And now to be able to like, is, understanding that like people do things differently. And I'm not able, people do things differently, and we have to accept that. And to take that learning into relationships with all of like my senior leadership team now has been amazing, because I've been like, cool, like it's made me so much more aware of like how things can be done, and actually in more efficient ways than I can do it. That's like an incredibly humbling place to be, and an incredibly humbling learning, but it's actually been very like advancing or empowering for our company to move forward.
That's exactly what I was looking for and hoping for.
And I want to give a big shout out to Dan because he has consistently worked on himself since I think 2020, Dan. It's been 5 years now, consistently showing up, facing his raw truth, understanding where he can, you know, be better as a leader, as a son, as a father, as sorry, not a father yet, as a brother, as a cousin, and hats off to him. And I think it has really also influenced and impacted who he is as a leader in the business. And yeah, it's been phenomenal to see, and we feel so grateful. On the shareholding team, we feel incredibly grateful to have somebody like Dan at the helm.
Thank you for your authenticity. Thank you for your openness. Again, it's always like I love talking to co-founders. It's not often I talk to family dynamic co-founders, and it's just interesting to see the relationship and how that shows up in the conversation. But let's get back to the business, right? Let's get back to the supply chain. I think we've spoken a lot about your kind of your personal philosophy, how you've thought about growing the business, like how that shows up, and it's obviously crucial. But now let's get to the practicals. Um, and the point in the story where I said I would park and pick back up, and it's a while ago now, but like when you launched, right? You launched at the Ranyuzak market, right? You had this I forgot what the name is, but it's from sugarcane, and you
Bagas.
had the thank you, and you had the bagas, and you had these capsules, and the product quality was an issue, right? Essentially your product performance wasn't up to standard, and up to scratch. There was no consistency. Talk to me about that chapter, right? And I guess it's like I don't think we need to go into such depth around the launch, but I just want to know around getting the product right, getting your supply chain right, especially in this kind of business, is so crucial. Yeah, what were some of the big challenges you had to overcome? I'm also just thinking there's 50,000 capsules in your first launch, and it's like
What do we
we
do
can't
with
use
them?
these.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think we really knew, both Lou and I, from the beginning, is that this business was going to do well, if we had an inherently good product. And so, when we received that batch of 50,000 capsules from China and we tested them, we knew that we had an issue on our hands. And I think for us, that speaks to another one of our core values, which is being imperfectly perfect. And I think we had the confidence in our idea to launch, knowing that there was, an imperfect product. And I think, launching at the Ranez City Farm Market was a perfect place to do this, because it allowed us to sort of show up with our vulnerability, but also to create the vision for our customer. And so what we had at the Ranez was a huge buy-in into the vision, but obviously disappointment with the product. And that was a very hard thing to accept.
well, that's
And
MVP, right?
Exactly. That was our MVP. We didn't want our MVP to be like that. We thought it would be better. But unfortunately, that was what we had to deal with. And I think, fast forward, 6 months later, and, obviously, with, at that time, I think there were 58 billion capsules sold globally. So it wasn't only, Lulu and Dan and Ollie working in a small farm shed, to solve this problem. There were some big multinational companies out there working on compostable materials and in the Espresso space. And we found a very cool German supplier and that had come up and patented this home compostable material. It wasn't made from bagasse, but it was certified home compostable. We did some tests with it. We were really happy. And that was our big pivot in the beginning, was being like, cool, we're not going to manufacture our own capsules. We're going to work with a leading supplier. And that's how our business model works today. We don't in-house manufacture the capsules. We receive the capsule shells, the lidding material, and then we've got the machinery, the IP, which is a big part of getting like coffee extraction right in capsules, to ensure that we can, allow coffee from South Africa's best roasters to perform really well in a capsule. And and again,
So
there's
it's not
some
just as simple as just lifting the lid off, packing it in, and then closing it, and you're ready to go,
No, no, I mean the world of like, having, being able to enjoy a flat white at a coffee shop is one thing. Understanding like how to get coffee to perform, especially in a capsule when you've only got 6 grams of coffee, is very different. And that's where we've been in like exposed to this huge world of the science of coffee. You know, what is particle size distribution and how does particle size distribution affect extraction consistency? Grind technology, like, how many different ways are there to grind a coffee bean? And, looking at like the latest technology from like Italian companies, fourth, fifth generational companies that are focused on like, mill grinding and how they've applied that science to coffee and how we can utilize those grinders from Italy and South Africa to help us pour the perfect shot. So there's so many different aspects, the quality of the paper on the top of our capsule and how that impacts taste and performance. And we've been able to, over the last 5 years, put all of those learnings into what we believe is the best encapsulation service in South Africa. And, I think, maybe I don't want to fast track here, but I think that was really a big step for us was at the end of 2022 when we got a call from Bootlegger. And, at that time, we were probably doing around like 40,000 capsules a month. And we got a call from Bootlegger actually in the same boardroom that I'm sitting in. We organized a meeting around a tiny table. It was like a school desk table. It was the CEO of Bootlegger, their head of product, and their CFO. And we sat around this table and they were like, guys, we've been watching what you've been doing and we're keen to work with you. And that was really the moment that took us from like a startup to where we now
Mom, we
operating.
made it.
Yeah. And I remember phoning Lou, like video call. I think Lou, I think you started crying. And we were like, no ways, like this is it. Like, and that's where it was a very exciting change. And it felt like, a great sort of like a reward and almost like an ease of tension to be like, wow, our vision is starting to play out.
Do you want to add?
Um, no, I think Dan covered it. Yeah.
Maybe what I can add there is just, one of the things, is just to speak to where we are at with scale at the moment. And I think, we started 4 weeks in a shed on my farm in 2000 and on my parents' farm in 2019, where we had a manual machine. We had two guys working those machines. At max, we could push out 500, maybe 750 on a good day. And I think now, to be in a fully like automated factory where we have two encapsulation lines and, both doing 12,000 capsules a day. And, it feels so exciting to like look back at that and being like, wow, we're pushing out 24,000 capsules a day from our factory in Cape Town. And it feels like we've, sort of entered this like, phase of like real growth.
Yeah, 24,000 a day is nuts. That's a huge amount of volume, especially. I mean, like that's half your MVP quantity of your full launch. It's like, yeah, we produce that in 2 days.
I know, but that takes time. That was 5 years ago.
But still, in 5 years, I mean, that's rapid. That's rapid growth. Well done.
Thank you.
And I think also Seattle coming on board earlier this year was another significant milestone for us. Obviously, we have massive respect for them as a coffee roastery. Everything they do is done with so much integrity, and they weren't keen on going into pods because of the quality of the coffee and the extraction. And to be able to present a product to them that mimics what a person has in a Seattle cafe at home. I think for me it was like, wow, we've done it. We've really cracked product excellence, and that's really hats off to Dan and our everybody who heads up product and our production team. It's phenomenal. My sister and her husband were visiting me last month in Greece from Johannesburg, and they're absolutely Seattle addicts. They go to Seattle every single day. And to be able to offer them a Seattle pod and to enjoy it here, like have a taste of what they love every day at the push of a button on the other side of the world, it's pretty amazing.
Thanks for sharing that story, Lucas. I think it speaks to like what pitch has worked really well in the roasters and what makes, capsules such an excellent way to enjoy coffee. And I think like this was something that we really struggled in the beginning. Before we launched 4 weeks, there was this like ego gap between capsules and good coffee. Like those two were never in the same room. And I think what we've been able to do is bridge that gap. And I think that's what the roasters have really seen in the positive side of things is like in their cafes, they can control how coffee is enjoyed. It's very easy, to make sure that cool in that portafolio, there's 18 grams of coffee. It's going to take 26 seconds to pour that shot. The milk's going to be microphoned at this texture and they're going to serve a delicious flat white. And we agree with that. There's
And you
no
get some large brands that will go unnamed that still don't manage to get it right.
yeah, but a majority of them do. And I think like for us, it was like, cool. We agree that that is the best way to enjoy coffee. But the big question was, what happens when people take coffee home? And then it's like, cool, how's that coffee being ground? How's it dosed? Like, what is the temperature of the water? How long are they brewing coffee for? And, what you end up with is someone who's grinding their coffee beans in their Nutri-Bullet, who's underdosing their market pot and getting like a really over-extracted brew. And what capsules allow us to do is it allows us to control the dosage. So how much coffee is in each capsule. We use the best grinding equipment available on the market. So it means the grind consistency is great. And if the roaster is happy with the product, all the customer has to do is push a button. And what that means is that we are able to deliver consistency time and time again. And that really is the beauty of capsules. And I think that that's, slowly what we're trying to convince roasters, is that it's an excellent way for the time hungry, convenient lover and at home or in an office or in a hotel room. And I think that's our big ask, to like retailers in South Africa, the guys like Checkers and the big hotels that are using plastic or aluminium capsules is to really consider, why they don't want to support the best local coffee roasters with products that are made with real integrity. And by that, we mean proper materials that have a very clear, like a waste management stream. And that's hopefully this next phase of our business that we're getting into. We've been very lucky to land a lot of the big roasters, and now we're really looking at infiltrating and encouraging the big retailers like Checkers and other big hotel chains to change over. And we understand that customers in South Africa are very price sensitive, that our capsules are not the premium that you're paying for our capsules is not significant in terms of total spend.
I just want to unpack the value proposition there. So the point of the service that you'll provide is for coffee roasters who are already committed, who are desiring a compostable solution for coffee pods. That's something that you would be able to provide. But even more so is like any coffee roaster that's considering going coffee pods in general, where you're able to compete now is just in terms of the quality as well. Right, so it's even aluminum or plastic-based capsules cannot perform at the level of quality that your coffee pods can, and then on top of that, they're compostable too, if I'm understanding correctly.
I think there's three key value propositions. So number one is the material that we use. So obviously that being you have a choice. Are you going with something that's recyclable like plastic or aluminium? and noting that it's very difficult to recycle plastic or aluminum pods. And the reason for that is that the coffee inside cannot be recycled. That's organic waste. So it means there's a process that needs to clean the coffee out of the capsule and then recycle that material, which is very difficult, very expensive, and not currently available in South Africa. So the choice is then cool. What is the other, what is sort of the best way forward? And that's a compostable material. And that's because you can take the entire unit, no separation, no cleaning, and compost that whole unit. So that really speaks to sustainability. The second area is that we don't roast our own coffee. And the reason for that is there are we've got a thriving coffee culture in South Africa, and we want to partner with guys who already have been, working in this industry for 10 to 20 years. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to elevate the quality of coffee that you are having in a hotel room, in your office, or at home.
Basically, how do you take the in-store coffee quality out of store and into an Airbnb, into a hotel, into someone's home? And it's basically about the fact that it's like, how do you like a challenge that they'll face is the fact that they can't get their brand experience into their customers' hands outside of their own controlled environment in a way that's also planet conscious. And are you able to solve that?
Correct. Correct. Or what are we trying to solve?
Also, the follow through, something you've mentioned even on our website that there's a compost tab on our website. We sell like an eye composter, and we have compost drop off and collection points around the country. It's something we're putting a lot of effort in this year also in growing that network to make it easier to compost your pods. I think it's one thing to sell a compostable product, but it's also then what's the end game? Where's the follow through? That's actually the part that matters the most. So underlying the coffee and the coffee experience, for us, our purpose really lies in what happens to that cup once you've enjoyed it.
It's brand. It's creating a globally recognized brand. When we talk about our USPs, it's excellent quality coffee by partnering with the best local coffee roasters in South Africa. It's sustainability by selling 100% home compostable pod and having a follow through solution like we've spoken to. And then it's brand. It's really trying to cultivate and foster and build a beautiful brand. And I think that if you look at like traditional manufacturing encapsulation companies like 4 Weeks, there's never a front facing brand. And that was something that we didn't want to create like a white label manufacturing business that just manufactures. We wanted to create a brand that stands for something. And that speaks to, one of the big reasons why Lou was pulled into 4 Weeks was because, she had the opportunity to grow other people's brands and to build those, but to build one herself and to apply all of her learnings and experience. And you know, yeah, so that's one of our third USPs, and I think that brand collaboration with our roasters has actually been very powerful. And 4 Weeks is almost like a stamp of excellence now. So whenever you see a 4 Weeks pod, that should indicate great. They've partnered with good coffee roasters, and we know that the product works really well.
Yes, that's also just one thing I want to understand here of the two different revenue models at the moment. And I know there's another product in the backlog, which trust me, I'm going to make sure there's time for. But there's again looking at your website, this is very much it's besides the 4 weeks Black Bold mix that I'm looking at. And obviously if anyone wants to have a look at what I'm seeing, go to 4weeks.com, 4wks.com. And so it's literally just Seattle, but then you obviously pump through the sleeve, and then it's like 4 weeks is on the side that will be pierced, right? Or I mean, both sides get pierced, of course, but like the you can tell me which side it is that matters, but like the bigger side. But 4 weeks is there, and so obviously there's clearly a co-branding. It's very clear about what's being sold here. You're buying Seattle coffee, right? But it's in a 4 weeks capsule. And that makes sense in that regard. But is that the revenue stream of the fact that Seattle, I'm going to buy your coffee from you and then co-brand it, and then we're going to sell it as well, but it's entirely our profit margin on top of that, versus the one that it's then when it's packaging as a service. Do you still keep your brand on that as well? Because I'm still using Seattle's example because it's like again you can have one client with the two different revenue models coming from the one. And I'm just curious about like the extent of how you're positioning your brand on the packaging of these products, on the things that are being sold in their stores versus what's being sold, what you're distributing. Is that different? Is it actually identically the same thing, but the revenue model changes? Like, yeah, help me what would that look like?
You phrased it so well. That's exactly it. The product is inherently the same and the revenue model changes. So on the service, 4 weeks is making money off an encapsulation fee, and the roaster then selling the final product makes the full margin. On the product side, the roaster makes money off selling us beans. We make money off selling the final product, if that makes sense. There's no difference between the capsule that you buy from a Seattle cafe or the Seattle pods that you buy on our 4 weeks website. It's the same product. Does that make
And then,
sense?
but it's also, yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. I mean, but again, it's like it's this is a no brainer to the coffee roasters because it's if you're going to be selling on their product as well, it's like yes, obviously in terms of their revenue, like it ends the moment that you buy their product, right? You bought the coffee and then after that you pass it on. But their brand, it's like please go for it, like just buy our coffee and then just get it. The more you succeed, the more we succeed.
And vice versa.
Um,
And maybe Lou,
yeah,
you can speak about why we've decided to go with collaboration route for this from our side to have 4 weeks on every single Seattle box in the 320 Seattle cafes around South Africa
massive.
is hugely beneficial for us. And that's the way that we view this is like a very strong collaboration. So I'll let Lou touch a little bit more on brand and collabs.
Yeah, we knew from the beginning that we weren't going to roast our own coffee, especially because it wasn't our expertise. And there are so many incredible roasters doing such an incredible job. And we wanted actually their coffee selfishly at home or in a boardroom or when we went on holiday. Um, and yeah, so collaboration is absolutely like ingrained into 4 weeks' DNA. And it is the uniqueness of our own range or our 4 weeks mixes. And I think, yeah, it's an incredible. The roasters have shown incredible trust in us, in having, as you mentioned, our branding on their packaging. And we hope and believe that is testament to the quality of the product and also the sustainability and everything that we are doing as a purpose-driven brand.
Epic.
And I think maybe to give like a clear analogy in terms of like the role that 4 weeks plays versus the roaster, most people are buying the capsule because of the coffee inside. They're buying a deluxe pod because they love deluxe, or they're buying a Rosetta capsule because they love a single, origin from Ethiopia that's fruity and acidic. That's why they're buying it. So how we sort of view 4 weeks in this wider like partnership and collaboration is almost like what Visa or MasterCards are to the bank. So on any like Discovery or Investec or F&B bank card, you will see Visa or MasterCard. And, that gives you the trust that this is going to work, but the bank is still the bank. And for us, that's the role and the mark that we want to have in the convenient coffee space is 4 weeks is a stamp of excellence that stands for two things. One is obviously convenience. Two, it speaks to sustainability, knowing that this product is made with a lot of integrity. And three, knowing that it works really well. And so I think that's quite a nice analogy for the audience to understand, cool, what is the role that 4X is playing in the coffee industry?
One thing I still haven't gotten total clarity on is this journey of building such a high integrity product in itself. And the point is it's like your inherent differentiation comes down to the sustainability of it, comes down to the fact that it's compostable. But in the early stages, it's just being able to get the business model, the service is like, dude, like we're gonna put this in a capsule for you. It's like can have done this with existing solutions. That my assumption would have been a lot less complex and a hell of a lot cheaper. Right. So I think the those challenges of really getting to what it is now, and really building that product that can work to this level. To be honest, I even bring that up. It's like that could probably be a podcast in itself. But like, if you can give me just a bit more kind of detail to, staying true to this vision and like the challenges of building this product itself. I feel like there's a lot of stuff there that we didn't really get into.
I think in short, exactly like what, if you look at like our policy around leave, if we had said in the beginning, cool, we're going to build a company that one day we're going to give ourselves 28 or the team 28 days of leave, that would never happen. Because every year we would find an excuse to say, cool, okay, this year there's a lot of projects on the go. We're going to keep it at 15 days. And that would be my exact answer to your question is that if we had started off the company using plastic or aluminum, it would have been very difficult, if not impossible, to switch to compostability. And that would be how I would summarize your question. So what we decided to do from the beginning is to go the more difficult route. And why I say difficult is because one, compostable materials are a lot more expensive. They're more difficult to work with in terms of like coffee extraction and science. But we knew, longer vision, 5, 10 years from when we started, that was what was going to be, almost imposed legally. And so that's sort of like the opportunity and the vision that we're allowing ourselves to live into. So yes, whilst we sacrificed, short-term revenue by turning down big hotels, big coffee roasters because we couldn't meet them at a price point, we believe we slowly, the market's slowly catching up, and 4 weeks is positioned in a perfect position to now take advantage of that.
We've also really pushed ourselves to, we have a mantra, lowest possible impact on the planet, greatest possible impact on people. And whether it's been our packaging or, yeah, any kind of big project we've adopted, specifically packaging, because it can be so wasteful, how can we maybe do it in a better way, a more conscious way? And can that also work as inspiration for others, especially because we are so collaborative in our service and in our product side of our business? I think that's worked really well for us as a campus.
And we've tried to stay true to that, and exactly that, when we're coming up with a decision with like packaging and, a box of packaging costs 2 Rand 84 or, 5 Rand 20. That's those are small numbers, but, you ramp that across a
24,000 a
hundred
day.
thousand
Yeah.
units and
That's a lot of the big
yeah.
cost difference.
Exactly. And so, that's where Lou it would be very good and say, cool, let's go back to why we started this. And that gap is slowly starting to become smaller and smaller. And why? Because more people are sort of cottoning on to this, idea. Or it's not even an idea. It's, where we're heading as like a society and as like a world of consumers is that we have to be more conscious about what we consume, and how we throw things away.
Love it. Cool. Talk to me about the kind of the present, the future. What are you currently going through? What are your challenges? What are you excited about next 6 to 18 months?
Cool. So yeah, I think we've probably in one of the most exciting phases that we've been in as a company. I think for a number of reasons. One is that off the back of the capital raise in November, we had we had quite ambitious targets. We've also employed a much bigger team. Some key roles. It's been a really great experience to work with like sort of a higher skilled like team. Um, so so the excitement there comes around like sustaining that from like a monthly cash flow perspective. And, for me, there's an excitement around that, and that entails hitting budget. I think that our next 12 to 18 months, there's three key things that we want to achieve. Hopefully this time I remember the third thing. The first is really like, dominate or becoming the market leader in capsules in South Africa. That's a big goal for us. Nespresso, Starbucks, and Illy, they have huge stamp on the South African market. We're slowly eating away at that. So for us, that's a big focus. Capsules in South Africa, how can we become the market leader? In October, we are launching our first sort of product edition in the coffee convenience space, and those are 4 weeks drip bags. So uh, for those of the audience that don't know what a drip bag is, it's a very cool piece of like Japanese origami. It fits over any size cup. So think camping, at home, in an office, in a hotel room, on a high cup lion's head in the morning. It's got 14 grams of pre-ground coffee inside. You don't need any machinery. All you need is hot water. So we are launching that product across our 8 core collective roasters mid-October. So for us, that's something that our whole team is focused on at the moment. It also feels really great, looking at when we started with our first product in 2019. It was very much manual and slowly build up. The way we've been able to launch this product is with a more like volume-based automated lens. So we're starting off with a fully automated machine. We'll be able to do 12,000 drip bags from the get-go. And so that feels like quite an exciting way to launch a product in a different way from where we started. So that's a second big focus to us is launching this product successfully and across South Africa. And I think our dream is to do a big collab with Cape Union Mart. And I think they're perfectly positioned for this product. We've had brief conversations with them in terms of launching this product. They've tried to launch many coffee related products over the past that haven't worked, and we believe that this is perfectly suited. So that's really what like the next 12 or the next year looks like for 4 weeks. So a year down the line, hopefully we'll be in a position where we have got a lot more sort of market share of South African capsules, and we would have successfully launched drip bags to the South African audience. The third area, which is probably the most exciting for us, is we've just had a group of postgraduate students from America work on a consulting project for 4 weeks with the main question of how can we take 4 weeks outside of South Africa. And what allows us to be like quite a flexible and unique business is that because we don't roast our own coffee, it allows us to expand at a much faster rate because we essentially a platform. So we are busy identifying one market. It looks like it's going to be Australia, but we are deciding between Dubai, Australia, Portugal, and Greece to basically set up a greenfield manufacturing business in one of these countries, which market sizes are 25 to 100 times the size of the South African market. And I think for us, that's such obviously it's very easy on paper to be like, cool, we're going to expand outside of South Africa. In reality, it's a little bit more difficult. But I think again, if you had to ask me why am I still at 4 weeks, it's because every day we're learning something new. And for me, over the next 12 months, I get to learn how to launch a new product. But, even better and more exciting than that is how do we take a South African company outside of South Africa and create a South African success story?
Dan, I need to just like double click on this point because it's for anyone. I've had a couple of people on the podcast scaling internationally and asked them how they did it or how they're doing it. This thing about having postgrads from the US for a 4 week project, was that paid for? Was this kind of like part of an internship? Was it part of like a university thing? And especially if you manage to get that for free, please, for how can more people do this?
So it's a really cool company called Dive Consulting. So they organize it depending on it's project dependent. So some are funded, some are paid for, and some are free. And I think for us, we've done 2 Dive projects in the past and they haven't really been successful. And, this year when Dive came to us and they're like, do you want a group of consultants? I was just thinking like, no, I can't have another 6 postgraduate consultants like in our boardroom. And then my mind switched and I was like, Dan, you are being offered as a company an incredible resource. How can you leverage off that? And I asked myself, like, what is on my KPA document? Like, what is my one big project that I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed with? And it was but basically by February next year, I have to have a market penetration strategy for 4 weeks to enter into a foreign market. And I was like, cool, instead of doing this myself, why don't I get fully involved with the project so it doesn't feel like I'm just sort of like blindly leading a team of 6 postgrad students. Let me get stuck in, let me guide this project, and let me try and get as much information as I can out of this postgrad team. And I think with that approach, we were able to have our most successful dive consulting project. And the deliverables that they were able to deliver puts us in a very good position to have clarity by Feb next year.
So dive consulting, like dive as in like DIVE.
Double I, yeah.
DIIVE. Dan, Lulu, thank you for being on the Founder Files. This has been amazing. What you know what's coming? What is the one question that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you that you'd like to answer now?
I have one. What has been your favorite part of being involved in founding 4 weeks?
Go for it.
Yeah, for me, it has definitely been, in the end, working with my cousins and the team that we have at 4 weeks. They are the most incredible people. They have grown with us and with the business. You walk into our factory and there is energy and the most incredible vibe from everybody on that production team. You cannot help but feel buoyed by that whole team. And then you walk into our office and it's the same thing. Really, really great people who are growing with us, alongside us. And it's just phenomenal to witness that growth and to be part of it and just to be surrounded by really, really cool people.
And probably one of the biggest reasons why we started 4 weeks is in South Africa, with our huge like inequality system, to be able to have social impact. Our current head of operations, his name's Marvelous. He's an incredible young man. We watched him in 2019. He was a cleaner at the Johannesburg City Farm Market, and he's now managing a team of 6 people. He runs our factory, and that's like one of the most like rewarding parts of running your own business is watching other people thrive and, putting in the platforms and systems and processes for them to thrive.
Epic. And you, Dan? What's the one question that I haven't asked that I should have?
I think you haven't asked, how do we enjoy drinking coffee?
Yes. Go for it.
And I think my favorite way to drink coffee is filter. And, everyone used to look at filter as sort of like the coffee your granny used to make. And I think filter and batch brew is now coming, back into trend. And, this makes us very excited for the drip bags because it's a filter style brewing mechanism. It's super clean. It's so easy to drink. It's very tasty. And yeah, is why I feel so excited about our new product launch in October 2025.
Epic. Well, yeah, I can't wait for round 2 of this once you've now scaled internationally and you've removed all of the other unsustainable coffee pods from landfill. What was it, 58 billion of them? This is a business I want to see take over the world. So you have my full support. Dan, Lulu, thank you for being on the podcast. Yeah, chat soon.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Cam.
One thing that stood out for me, and I even said this to Dan and Lulu afterwards, is their strategy seems crystal clear. Like the way that they're executing, the way they're structuring their business, their KPIs are even strategic of Dan having to figure out how they're going to go to market into a new country is really epic and impressive, right? And so for the record, it's those kinds of topics that are built into the founder roadmap, into that assessment, to see what's super clear and how can you get to the same level of clarity, the same level of confidence, that Dan and Lulu have while scaling their business. And what this is going to do for you is either going to validate that like things are going as great as you think they are, or it's going to highlight a couple areas, that could be improved, could be better, could be worked on. And from there, it's actually going to suggest some next moves about what you should do based on what the assessments told you. And you can build your own roadmap over the next 90 days on what it is that you can prioritize. That's why I called it the roadmap, but I'd love some feedback on the name and feedback on the tool in general. That's the only thing that I ask in return, actually. It's totally free. There's no email. There's no sign up required. It's just an entirely free gift to you. We just love your feedback in return. If you want to experience it now, go click on the link in the description below or go to roadmap.metavolve.co. And while I'm at it, in terms of giving out URLs, if you want to go to 4 weeks, go 4weeks.com. That's 4wks.com. But yeah, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for listening to the full episode of the Founder Files. Until next time, keep building, keep learning, keep telling your story. Cheers.